Sasaye Hatsushima says that until he turned 16, he lived alone with his father, Taiki Hatsushima. Then, without warning, everything changed when his father remarried, placing him in a brand new family with no blood ties at all. He reflects that all 3 members of that new family are girls, and their vivid, overwhelming personalities make him feel painfully ordinary beside them. He adds that things turned even crueler when his father fell ill and died less than 3 months after the marriage, leaving that family of 4 behind. He reveals that his father had spent all his money on a parallel world, and that absurd claim leaves him reeling as everything spirals even further. Then, a strange disturbance swallows the family whole, and he can only stare as the impossible opens around them. He explains that they had only just finished breakfast and were about to head out when everything changed in an instant. The group all of a sudden finds itself in a bizarre forest packed with towering, unnatural growths, and they look around in disbelief, unable to grasp where they are. One of the girls says they should look around first, another quickly agrees, and he nervously warns that they cannot just rush in without thinking. He lets out a weary sigh and admits that none of the 3 are going to listen to a word he says anyway. He notes that they do not even seem to be in Japan, then introduces Kanade Hatsushima as a woman so exceptional she once led hundreds of employees at a major company by herself. He explains that Minako Hatsushima quit school 5 years earlier to become a manga artist, and despite her flashy appearance, she is serious, disciplined, and the strongest girl in school. He says Chinatsu Hatsushima is a true genius, a girl far beyond ordinary standards who skipped a grade, entered high school at 12, and already carried the air of a real intellectual. Compared to those remarkable women, Sasae Hatsushima can only call himself completely average and admits he has no idea why they ever chose him. As the 3 girls move through the strange forest, he says that if he has any strength at all, it is only the tiny bit of stubborn grit he inherited from his father. The tension snaps when a beast-like figure appears, and he reacts in alarm before realizing the creature has definitely noticed them. Startled by the sound and movement around her, Minako whips around and demands to know who is there. The girls freeze in surprise when they spot a human with animal-like ears, then light up in excitement when they realize she is cute and can even speak Japanese. As he pulls everyone together, the creature stares at the group in disbelief and fixates on the fact that all 3 females are with him. Standing side by side, the 3 girls give off such overwhelming brilliance that he can only describe them as dazzling with talent. Grinning through the tension, she declares that now they can build a super strong group and make those enemies pay. A cry rings out asking if she is alright as she all of a sudden collapses to the ground, her sword slipping free while the others rush toward her. Held up by the long-haired girl, she breathes sharply that they need to run because they are outside the barrier and this is the creature's territory. The white-haired girl stiffens and anxiously asks whose territory this is. Before anyone can react, a grotesque creature bursts out behind them, crashing into the scene with violent force. Seeing the danger a moment too late, the boy shouts a warning for Mana to look behind her. The white-haired girl steps forward, orders the others to stay back, and says that if there is only one enemy, she can handle it even in her current state. The beast strikes first and hits the short-haired girl before the white-haired fighter can intercept it. She cries out and struggles as the creature grabs her, trapping her in a frantic, desperate fight. The long-haired girl urgently tells the boy to support the injured girl while he still can, as the white-haired fighter moves to counterattack amid the spreading chaos. Breathes sharply in pain, the injured girl says it is no use and explains that to gain the power she needed, she paid an enormous price and does not have much longer, so she begs them to leave her and run. As the forest erupts with harsh cracking sounds from every direction, the group freezes while a warning hangs in the air that if they do not move now, it will be too late. The white-haired beast woman steps forward in alarm and demands to know what those creatures are as more of them gather behind her. Surrounded by grotesque, skull-faced monsters closing in from every side, someone anxiously asks how many of them there are. The creatures all of a sudden leap at her from all directions, and Mana throws herself into a frantic counterattack as the assault crashes down all at once. In the middle of the clash, Mana's expression changes sharply as she realizes something is wrong and loses focus for a split second. Mana falters and hunches forward in visible strain, while the others cry out her name and shout for everyone to stay back. Forcing herself upright despite her condition, Mana declares that she will handle these creatures herself. She launches into close combat and drives her attack into one of the monsters, trying to break their advance before they can overwhelm the group. But in the next instant, multiple creatures crash into her at once, and Mana is dragged into a desperate, chaotic struggle as panic flashes across her face. The skull-faced creatures crowd around the fallen girl, remarking that she is a new one and that she looks like easy prey to them. She cries out as several monsters pin her down at once, and the situation turns brutally chaotic. The cat-eared girl glares ahead and warns the monsters not to touch them, insisting those people are their last hope. She stands frozen for a moment, her expression tightening as the danger before her all of a sudden turns personal. One of the creatures mockingly says she is full of what those people gave her, twisting the moment into something deeply disturbing. A pack of skull-faced monsters lunges straight at the cat-eared girl, swarming her from the front in a violent rush. The blonde girl explodes in anger and curses at them, while the long-haired girl clutches a child close and recoils in horror at how awful the scene has become. The boy throws himself in front of the blonde girl and grabs her as he begs his older sister not to do this. As he struggles to stop her, the blonde girl demands to know why he keeps standing in her way. Refusing to back down, the boy tells her that if she charges in now, she will only die too. A voice protests that this cannot be happening, lamenting that the girl is about to meet a horrible end as the chaos closes in. Facing the children, the blonde girl coldly says their mother will understand and insists they know what must be done for the family to get out of this. The long-haired woman steels herself and says they have no other choice, so they need to run while they still can. Even as danger surges around her, the cat-eared girl urgently tells them to run straight ahead and assures them that direction is the right one. The boy all of a sudden recognizes the voice as the cat-eared girl's, while she quietly urges him to keep living. In a final act of resolve, she says she is staking everything on their strength and kindness. A violent blast erupts as she pleads for them to save this world, throwing the whole scene into shock. The boy stares in disbelief and realizes she detonated herself so they could escape. Through grief and shock, the long-haired woman says that thanks to her sacrifice, they will survive. That hope is crushed almost instantly when the monsters are revealed to still be alive, and someone cries out in despair that it was all for nothing. Even now, they are told they have no choice but to trust the cat-eared girl's sacrifice and keep running. The long-haired woman panics that at this rate they are finished because more enemies keep pouring in and she cannot see any way out. Someone warns that the monsters are closing in fast, driving the group into even greater panic. A new force all of a sudden appears and orders the Sorcerer Squad to defend the otherworld visitors as magic fire tears across the battlefield. The fleeing group drops in shock as the blazing counterattack erupts behind them and slams into the pursuing monsters. More reinforcements arrive, and a command rings out for the Guardian Squad to form a defensive wall around the survivors. The Healer Squad is ordered to cast support spells, and a young mage right away begins roosting the front line. Another commander gives the signal, and the sword-bearing squad draws their blades at once. The armored fighters charge into the horde as their leader orders them to wipe out the monstrous attackers and reclaim the field. Seeing this sudden rescue, the boy can only stare in stunned disbelief while the woman beside him breathes sharply in shock. A guard urgently orders everyone into the fortress at once, then reports that the other road visitors have been secured and calls for the gate to be sealed right away. From high above the wall, the defenders hear terrified screams as a huge swarm of monsters rushes the city entrance. As blades and spells strike the attackers, an order is given for the guardians to fall back while the sorcerers cover them, and the gate must be closed at once. The defenders force the massive doors shut and are told not to let a single monster slip inside. With the enemy pressing forward, a command rings out to raise the barrier, and a huge magic formation begins sealing the entrance. The barrier activates just in time, and inside the corridor, the exhausted group realizes they barely made it while the pounding outside continues. New orders spread through the hall as the healers are told to treat the wounded and the sword fighters are told to secure everything. A warrior steps forward to greet the shaken survivors and says she is relieved they are safe, welcoming the honored guests from another world. She introduces herself as Sugar Maniash while soldiers and mages continue working behind her. She explains that she commands this northern stronghold, Pranhar, and that she also stands as the foremost among its sword fighters. Sugar directly asks them to come with her and demands to know where the girl who summoned them is. After a heady pause, Sugar realizes the one who summoned them has already lost her life. The white-haired girl shakily explains that the summoner was her little sister, Solshmenish. Fighting back tears, the girl starts apologizing for what happened. Sugar cuts off the apology and explains that Solsh left for the Gardens of Isis before them, and in their land that final journey is not seen as something tragic. As the boy struggles to understand what Isis means in this world, Sugar says Solsh had already lost her family before summoning them, so in a sense her death may have brought her peace. The boy asks whether Solsh left behind any final words carrying her hopes, and the answer is a simple plea to save this world. Sugar says that plea means they no longer need to pursue becoming the strongest or save the world out of duty, because they have already accepted her final faith. Another woman interrupts, says she does not fully understand the matter, and politely but firmly refuses to go along with that conclusion. She adds that she is even less pleased because, while her own ladies are fighting in a crisis, these sisters seem to have come running to help their brother instead. The opposing woman apologizes for sounding harsh, but says she is the head of her household and must put her family's safety before anything else. She says that is exactly why they need to be sent back to their own world. She insists she cannot let her family face such dangers. Sugar shuts that down at once and explains there is no way to return them, because the moment Solsh died, this land lost the only means to send them back. The woman argues that even if returning them were possible, they still could not afford to do it. The boy all of a sudden tries to protest, but one of the girls restrains him and stops him from escalating the situation. The woman admits she hates doing this, but says they are cornered as enemy numbers keep rising and the fortress barrier is nearing its limit, while another voice urgently tells the girl holding him to let go. As tension spikes, the boy tries to calm everyone down and urges them to relax. He tells the others that for now they should hear these people out and listen to what they have to say. Still uneasy, he asks what they actually want them to do. One warrior explains that those weapons exist to protect the sacred blade. She quickly corrects herself, saying they are really meant to guard the mithril blade, and adds that these anti-undead weapons are even heavier than the ones carrying them. Cutting through the distraction, she orders the group to decide which role fits each of them best. The group is framed with rising resolve as the goal is declared, to become the strongest familia in history. She reveals they have already prepared a special sword for that purpose, and its overwhelming size leaves the others stunned. When asked why a force from another world would help them, the answer comes that an old legend claims a familia of outsiders once saved this world before. She admits she doubted that legend herself, but after meeting them, she can no longer dismiss it. Another woman says the raw talent of the three of them is staggering. The boy realizes those three stand on an entirely different level, and then he is told to take the role of leader and speak for the team as well as for the law of spirit packs. As they face the towering structure ahead, the group falls silent, and the weight of what awaits becomes impossible to ignore. Kanae is called over as the hosts explain that while they cannot offer much to the others, they can at least provide baths and meals. She says she wants everyone to relax and insists that if this mission were truly beyond his ability, she would never ask it of him. She hesitates, then admits there is one last question she needs to ask him. He glances around in confusion and asks why only women are here. A guard remarks that, from what he has seen so far, the fortress appears to be inhabited only by women. Inside, the women explain that the fortress is defended by those prepared to die, and that it contains only women. The beast-eared woman says he will understand why soon enough. The scene lingers beneath a bright moon as the answer is left hanging in the air. The mood all of a sudden softens as a woman stretches and lets out a relieved breath. Another woman addresses Mane-san and asks if this situation has caught her off guard. The white-haired woman says she is not especially impressive, but she still believes in repaying kindness and never leaving a favor unanswered. The dark-haired woman jokingly says the other girl is always so thoughtful, then adds that if they were building a family, she would make the perfect partner. The white-haired woman shyly rejects that idea and says she would rather serve as a guardian. Another voice explains that while they all have decent reflexes, she is the only one truly devoted to training and pushing herself further. She adds that she can fight with weapons, so she believes she should take the role with the greatest risk. Looking over the options, one girl says those roles seem to demand brains, or at least speaking skill, and if that is the case, she guesses she would end up as either a sorcerer or a healer, while admitting magic sounds interesting. Another excitedly says making pacts with spirits sounds incredible, and someone right away agrees, saying the exact same thought had already crossed her mind. As they move forward, someone says whatever happens next should be left for Kanai to decide. The hooded boy, visibly shaken, tells Sasae that they need to leave right now. Staggering away in a daze, he admits that his head is spinning. The boy asks his mother if she has finished that discussion, and she calmly confirms that she has as she approaches him in the corridor. She adds with an easy smile that she is going to take a bath too. When he reaches for her in concern and asks whether something is wrong, she turns back toward him. She insists she is fine, then lightly remarks that his concern must come from being his father's son. With a soft but serious expression, she tells him he can tell when she is truly worried or unwell. As the scene shifts inside, he realizes she is genuinely worried about this matter of familiars. He admits there seems to be no way to avoid that fate and says those women truly are their last hope. She asks what is troubling him about choosing their roles, and he explains that Manko and Hinana are unexpectedly proactive because they said they would follow whatever he decided. She reacts with surprise that they would leave the decision to him, then says that if this were only about choosing roles, she might still have been able to decide at once. She confesses that she had felt uneasy from the start because she remembered the girl who had been sold off paying a terrible price just to gain the power needed to summon them, and that memory still haunts her. She recalls being told that forming pacts with spirits always comes with a brutal price. The explanation continues that the price could mean giving up years of life, a limb, or even one of the 5 senses, and that stronger spirits demand even harsher sacrifices. She says that for women, the cost they most often pay centers on the thing they value most. He realizes with horror that she is referring to a woman's future as a mother. She explains that because it is not essential in battle, that loss is seen as the most convenient option, while men are more likely to lose something directly tied to fighting ability. As he pictures the broken figure being described, he understands that men in this world are forced to choose a sacrifice critical to combat, making it likely they give up something needed to keep fighting. She says that, in other words, what must be decided is which sacrifice to accept. Overwhelmed, she breaks down as the family stands nearby and says this means deciding which 3 family members must lose something unimaginably precious. He concludes that the choice is either to refuse the familiar contract entirely, or decide who among them will bear that loss. Faced with the dilemma, he grimly asks whether this can really be called an easy choice. She snaps that no matter what he chooses, it will hurt either way. Seeing his hesitation, she presses him to at least offer some kind of suggestion if he cannot decide. As he starts to respond, she grabs him and demands to know if he truly understands what his proposal would lead to. While facing her, he admits that something has felt wrong ever since they were summoned here, and asks why he was called into this world at all. He says that among the 3 of them, each seems exceptional enough to look like someone who could save the world without him. He goes on to say that compared with them, he is just an ordinary man with no real strength worth mentioning, so he cannot stop questioning it. Then he asks why a woman of her caliber would ever choose to marry someone like his father. The question leaves her shaken, and the family nearby also looks stunned as he adds that his father seemed painfully average, so there should have been countless better men pursuing her. He quietly asks Sasase what kind of woman his mother seems to be in her eyes. She answers that his mother always seemed like a proud and commanding woman who could make the right decision without fail, and he replies that she was obviously a strong and remarkable lady. She breaks down and admits that she was never as strong as everyone believed. She recalls that whenever she had to decide something for herself and the children, the thought of making anyone unhappy always reduced her to tears. Through tears, she says she could endure those choices only because Taiki had been there for her, and she tells him that he is the only one she believes can do this. Clenching her fists, she explains that his father came to truly understand her when she was at her lowest, and that support gave her the strength to carry all those painful decisions. He gently reminds her that her husband is gone now. Overwhelmed, she confesses that without him as her support, everything feels unbearable and she can no longer decide anything. He answers with a calm smile, saying it is fine because it is not as if she made the suggestion lightly, and he assures her that he will handle it. She cries out that even so, the choice still carries risk, and warns that there is no way he can get through it without losing something precious. As he reaches toward her, she tearfully insists that he can do it. Helping her steady herself, he says he knows she will be able to make the best choice to protect their family. Through tears, she says he will tell them her suggestion tomorrow, but if he says there is no other way, they will have to take the idea seriously. As he swears to do it, she is shaken by how much he looks and sounds exactly like his father. Fighting back tears, she says this will be the last time she asks, and begs him to make decisions the way Taiki once did. Caught off guard, he awkwardly asks what exactly she wants him to do. With raw desperation, she reaches out and asks him for comfort. He right away steadies her as she stumbles forward, and the sudden closeness leaves him flustered while she leans on him. She asks him to calm her down, and the moment turns deeply emotional as she remains close to him. Still relying on him, she asks him to say her name. He reassures Kanae that everything will be all right because he will always be there to support her, and she tearfully accepts those words. Outside, the towering structure stands in silence as the scene pulls away from their private moment. Before the gathered group, someone formally asks Lady Kanae which role each member of her family will take. One of the beast-eared women warns that if they truly intend to proceed, they will have no choice but to resort to harsher methods. Kanae remains calm and says there is no need for concern because she has already decided everything. The shocked woman asks who will serve as the family's sword-bearer first. Kanae firmly declares that Minako, Hinana, and she herself will be the 3 sword-bearers. The beast-eared woman erupts in disbelief and demands to know how non-sword-bearers could possibly become sword-bearers. Kanae explains that the huge sword is too large for them, so she asks for 3 weapons better suited to them. Still doubtful, the woman questions what will happen to the other 3 roles and warns that such a setup would leave the family dangerously unbalanced in battle. A young man answers that their 4th member will take on the remaining roles of guardian, sorcerer, and healer. The woman furiously rejects the idea as impossible for any family in combat, but Kanae coldly states that this is the direct decree of the Empress at the Hatsushima group. The room stills, as if everyone is waiting for what that decree will unleash next. The challenge now is no longer whether they can decide, but whether anyone can stop what has already been set in motion. Kane remains calm and says there is no need for concern because she has already decided everything. The shocked woman asks who will serve as the family's sword-bearer first. Kanae firmly declares that Minako, Hinata, and she herself will be the 3 sword-bearers. The beast-eared woman erupts in disbelief and demands to know how non-sword-bearers could possibly become sword-bearers. Kanae explains that the huge sword is too large for them, so she asks for 3 weapons better suited to them. Still doubtful, the woman questions what will happen to the other 3 roles and warns that such a setup would make for an unbalanced family in battle. A young man answers that their 4th member will take on the remaining roles of guardian, sorcerer, and healer. The woman furiously rejects the idea as impossible for any family in combat, but Kane coldly states that this is the direct decree of the Empress at the Hatsushima group. Kanae stares ahead and declares this the start of the strongest family, making clear she will accept no objections. The narration says this is where their families struggle to save another world. The game of Familia truly begins. As a swarm rushes the gate and the barrier begins to break, someone panics that it is hopeless and the barricade is about to fall. The 3 girls rush forward together, with Kane shouting for everyone to move as one. They enter perfectly coordinated combat at full speed, breaking through the enemy line with a 3-pronged assault. One of the girls can only stare in shock at the overwhelming sight as she realizes this is the Outworlder's true strength and calls it incredible. Amid the chaos, an observer thinks a Familia survives through balance, so with defenses this weak, that flaw should have been fatal. Even so, a devastating blast tears across the battlefield as the group drive the enemy back with crushing force. The onlookers stare in disbelief, asking what kind of support spell could do that, and insisting such power should have exhausted him, before another voice tells them to look closer, because he also shielded his allies with a warding spell just as strong. Their shock deepens when they realize he also cast a healing spell and even reinforced them with a buff at the same time. A stunned observer demands to know if Did really mastered 3 separate roles alone, then realizes he also formed pacts with ultra-powerful spirits of every element. Another voice is left speechless, wondering what in the world Sasai Hatimiha could possibly have offered to gain that kind of power. The hooded figure stands amid the chaos as the question hangs over the battlefield, fixed on the price behind such overwhelming strength. Did remains calm under the pressure, his expression steady, while everyone else struggles to grasp what he has done. Surrounded by monstrous threats, someone breaks down and says it is over and they are all going to die there. The narration reveals that Mage also died not long ago, passing away in her comrade's arms. It is further revealed that in her final moments, the situation turned horrifying as the demon attacked her mercilessly. Even with that grim past, the girl explains that she used a self-detonating spell to protect the Outworlders she brought there, and now vows to summon the strongest Familia ever from another world. Through tears, she says they are all going to die there anyway, so if a Familia strong enough to save the world appears, she does not care who comes from that other world. With enemies pouring in from every side, the 3 girls charge ahead together as Kanae rallies everyone and orders them to move. As blades crash together, one of the girls stares at the Outworlder's strength in shock, realizing this is the power they truly wield. Kanae instantly takes command, ordering Minako to break the enemy line on the right and Hinata to protect the wounded, while an observer is stunned that a Transcendent Sea Leader skill could produce such precise orders in a first campaign. Hinata rushes in fiercely, and another voice admits they have never seen anyone move like her before, especially with enough combat skill to hold the enemy back alone. At the same time, the dark-haired girl reads the battlefield mid-fight, and the narration points out that the smaller monsters lack intelligence while the leader is hidden among the medium-sized ones, showing how quickly she has analyzed the enemy. The hooded caster unleashes a brilliant light, and someone realizes this may be the one thing that can get them out alive. The blast slams into the charging monster and sends it flying back with overwhelming force. Hinata follows with another crushing strike, smashing into the target as Kanae calls her name in the middle of the attack. Catching the opening instantly, the strategist points it out, and Kanae praises Hinata for creating that chance. Kane leaps in to end it as someone urges her to finish the fight, and she brings down a brutal final blow. With the enemy defeated, the 3 girls raise their weapons as the crowd erupts and declares that victory is theirs. As the wounded are treated, the young man calmly says his healer powers can only be used on sword rules and tells them not to worry because the battle is already over. Watching him work, someone is stunned by his high-level medical magic and realizes he also has sorcerer skills, leaving them wondering what kind of person he really is. Later, under the night sky, a woman praises the Outworlders for helping repel the dead male forces, and calls their achievement a spectacular feat that will be remembered across Titania, adding that his courage made it possible. Inside a lively feast, The group raises their mugs as the celebration is credited both to their own efforts and to the Outworlders' work. Their hosts say they would be honored if the group accepted their hospitality again, while admitting that tonight's feast is modest. The magical effect on her grows harder to contain. After the meal, the laughter fades and the table is left covered with empty dishes and cups, showing how completely the celebration has burned itself out. One girl groans that she is completely stuffed, while another all of a sudden asks where Sasaye has gone. Outside by the ruins, Sasaye stands alone beneath the night sky, quietly apart from the others. The boy joins her, asks if she sees it too, and she confirms it as he realizes the dead males are now appearing farther north. The boy asks whether they can finally wipe those creatures out for good, but Sasaye says nothing. A woman steps out and politely interrupts, asking who Sasaye is speaking with. She nervously introduces herself by asking who he is. She reveals that she is the sorcerer who saved Cyril. Sasaye says he remembers her and begins to introduce himself, but she already knows he is an outworlder. She identifies him as Sasaye Hatsushima, the man known as a sorcerer, healer, and guardian, while he reacts with embarrassed surprise at being so well known. When he asks if she means the person he was just speaking to, she awkwardly admits that her dramatic way of talking is just a phase tied to her class, leaving him confused as she laughs it off. She then says there is something she wants to ask him and directly brings up the secret behind his strength. Speaking as a fellow sorcerer, she explains that powerful spells require pacts with strong spirits, and that the stronger the spirit, the steeper the price. She stares at the destruction from earlier and points to the tremendous power he displayed that day. She steps closer and bluntly asks what sacrifice he made to gain that kind of power, catching him off guard. As they stand outside, she says there is a feast tonight and asks why he is not excited about good food. He quietly admits that food no longer tastes delicious to him. Smiling casually, she reveals that she traded away her sense of taste. She explains that the women of the Cathal tribe sacrifice their ability to bear children to form spirit pacts, and that this sacrifice grants them the minimum power needed to fight dead males. She adds that to form pacts with higher-level spirits, they must pay even more. Even while eating, she says her loss of taste is why she likes trying many foods, and explains that the greater the sacrifice, the greater the strength gained. She says that despite surrendering something precious, she could only form a pact with the 8th-ranked fire spirit Yakimataki, while far stronger sorcerers made contracts with the 4th-ranked Emblem Knight, the 2nd-ranked Daikaber, the 3rd-ranked Fearbird, and even the 1st-ranked Spirit King Meltiroa. She says she can still sense that his power approaches theirs, and concludes that he must have also formed pacts with water and earth spirits. Grabbing him in desperation, she begs him to tell her what price he paid for so much power, while he refuses to say that strength is free. With a strange smile, she says she is willing to pay the proper price herself. She all of a sudden moves closer and awkwardly suggests that although many women in the fortress do not trust men, she is trying to set that aside. As she takes his hands, she says she has some experience with difficult situations and asks if he simply has trouble getting close to others. Flustered but honest, he says he is definitely interested, and she right away tells him not to avoid the issue. Before the moment can go any further, an older woman bursts in and shouts at Sasaye-kun, demanding to know what he thinks he is doing. Startled, he calls her mom, while the woman says she had been worried sick after finding him alone there with a young lady. She glares sharply and demands an explanation, and in a panic he blurts out that nothing has happened yet. Blushing and on the verge of tears, the woman sadly concludes that he really does prefer younger women. Confused and alarmed, he asks whether his mother has been drinking and why she starts saying things like that whenever an older woman drinks. The curse deepens its grip on her condition. Lying beside him, the woman says everyone is worried, then brushes it off by saying she has simply had an exhausting day. Seeing him awake, she teasingly tells Sasae-kun that he is causing trouble. She doubts he has never been unsettled by an older woman like her, while he stammers that it is not really like that. With a flushed smile, she keeps teasing him and increases the awkwardness, making the atmosphere even more tense. She presses him to explain what he actually sacrificed and tells him to answer her. He reminds her she said she would finish the discussion, then insists he must have paid some price and lost something important. Looking at him seriously, she asks why he will not tell her what he lost. He says he did not lose anything truly important to him and tells her it is nothing she needs to worry about. She quietly asks what truly matters to him, then urges him to tell her. As she moves even closer, the tension sharpens and he hesitates before trying to answer. As everyone around him seems to know what he sacrificed, he stands alone and quietly confirms that this really is the issue being forced into the open. The unseen speaker bluntly asks why he is not going to tell them and presses him on how he could keep it hidden. He reflects that everyone in his family is too kind, his expression tightening with emotion. The other side acknowledges his point and admits that when he formed the pact with them, His offer was far beyond what they expected. A towering supernatural negotiation unfolds as he faces 3 overwhelming beings in the middle of the ruined space. They reveal that they heard he had been hoping to make a pact with all 3 of them by himself. Without backing down, he asks whether this is really the standard of an otherworlder, then introduces himself as Sasai Hatsushima. One of them explains that under normal circumstances, they would never allow any human to form even a single pact so easily. Another says they decided to grant his wish only to pass the time, then points out the absurdity of him arriving from another world in just 600 years. Their judgment turns harsh as one admits disappointment and says they can sense no talent in him at all. One of the beings coldly says it does not mind words alone because, in its view, there is nothing he could sacrifice that would ever be worthy of a pact with them. An unseen figure challenges that judgment and calmly asks whether they are truly certain of that. Startled, the creatures ask what he said, and Sasai openly admits he has no special talent and is perfectly average. Even so, he insists there is one thing he can offer them that would definitely be useful, and they right away demand to know what that could be. With a confident smile, he reveals that what he can offer is relief from boredom. He reminds them that he already called himself ordinary, then says he chose to meet them specifically to buy time. The beings repeat his claim in their own words and realize that he is calling them ancient and utterly bored. Spreading his arms without fear, Sasai declares that if they make a pact with him, they will never be bored again. That argument hits a nerve, and the beings admit that immortals like them really do live with unbearable boredom, while another acknowledges he struck exactly where it hurts. Still, one of them narrows the discussion and demands to know how he plans to actually keep such a promise. One of the beings corners him, demanding to know what exactly Sasai plans to give up to keep that promise. Sasai answers without hesitation that he is ready to give up everything. He says he would surrender his limbs, his 5 senses, even every emotion he has, if that is the price they demand. He pushes it further, saying they can remain within him as part of the bargain. Sasai adds that if they remain with him, they can travel the world by his side and help save it. A spirit cuts straight to the point. He wants them to use him as a way to enter the mortal world, and Sasai calmly agrees. Offended, the spirit glares at him and demands whether he understands who he is speaking to, asking if he truly takes them for mere low-ranking servants. Sasai acknowledges that they are powerful, deeply honored, and revered by all. Then he bluntly says that despite all of that, they are still just idle loafers, stunning the spirits into silence. He presses the point, saying that while everyone else risks their lives on the front lines, these supposedly glorious beings have only stayed home complaining about how much there is to do. Chains all of a sudden lash around Sasai and pin him in place as the spirits answer the insult with open force. One armored spirit grabs him and warns him to watch his tongue, making it clear they will not overlook his disrespect. Another spirit, wreathed in flame, coldly says it could destroy someone like him in an instant. Even as the pressure tightens, Sasai stays eerily calm and remarks that they would never actually do something so foolish. He reminds them that he already said it, insisting they have more than enough time to spare anyway. With a strange smile, Sasai admits that they are grand and mighty beings revered by all. Then he turns that praise into another barb, saying they are so grand they would never stoop to something so petty. The flames surge hotter as a spirit snaps that he could die for clinging to such a foolish assumption. Sasai fires back, asking whether even this is not enough to make them realize how absurd their pride has become. Bruised but unshaken, he points out the contradiction and notes that they just claimed they could destroy him instantly, yet they did not. Sasai locks eyes with them and says he already knew they could not do it, leaving one spirit visibly rattled as it demands to know why. He declares that the answer is simple. They are not the kind of beings who can ignore the danger swallowing this world. With a battered but confident grin, Sasai says that is exactly why he came there to forge a pact with all of them, because he truly believes in their greatness. As the atmosphere turns heavy, one spirit admits it seems he has won the argument, while another points out that even they cannot casually kill an outworld visitor. The pressure around him fades, his injuries begin to mend, and a spirit remarks that Sasai is a far more interesting human than expected. She praises him for striking the very heart of what matter in their words, and Sasai awkwardly replies that he is not sure he has any special talent, only that he seems to possess something ordinary people here do not. The spirits decide that having someone like him at their side will be entertaining, for better or worse, and they seem ready to accept him. Sasai quickly adds that the world is in crisis, and that they had already considered making a pact if a worthy candidate appeared, so this outcome is only natural. But one spirit sharply cuts him off and says that, even so, they still cannot agree. She explains that spirits lend their power only in accordance with the sacrifice offered in return. The spirits apologize, but make it clear that the sacrifice he proposed is nowhere near enough for them to lend him their strength. They firmly conclude that under those terms, the pact cannot even begin. Sasaye quietly accepts that his first offer failed, then reveals he still has another proposal he has kept in reserve. He steps forward without hesitation, showing he is prepared to push the negotiation even further. The gathered spirits fix their eyes on him in surprise, stunned by what he is about to suggest. Looking down at him from above, they ask if he is truly serious about this. One spirit warns him to think carefully, asking whether he really understands what will happen if he loses that price. Another challenges him, saying this world has nothing to do with him, and asking why he would choose to pay such a crushing cost for its sake. Sasae explains that when his group first arrived in this world, a girl gave her life to save them, and that moment taught him that resolve alone would never be enough to survive. He declares that realization is exactly why he decided to stake everything, because aside from his own life, this is the most important thing he has. A spirit says there is one thing far more important to him than what he first offered, and demands to know what it could possibly be. Sasae confirms that he truly does have such a thing, leaving the spirits desperate to hear his answer. He says he will reveal it on one condition, that they accompany him on a journey. The spirits burst into laughter at his audacity, clearly entertained by his nerve. Even so, they admit he is a remarkable human for making them feel such emotion after they had gone numb over ages of existence. After a pause, they finally agree to proceed, while Sasae braces himself for what comes next. One spirit identifies herself as Aquaspia, the spirit queen of water. Another declares himself Meltiro, the spirit king of fire. The last introduces himself as Kenroga, the spirit king of earth. The pact is sealed as Meltiro claims Sasae's left eye to witness the world, while Aquaspia says she will dwell in his blood so she can hear the state of the world through his heartbeat. Kenroga declares that he will dwell in half of Sasae's body and use his skin to feel the world. As the power settles into him, the spirits declare that the pact is now fully sealed. Back in the present, Sasae asks from their position on the battlefield how they could possibly defeat those enemies. The answer comes bluntly, they likely cannot, because the enemy still has overwhelming numbers and endless waves crashing against the fort. It is explained that their own strength alone is not enough, and although the girls are the only ones who can face those enemies directly, they are still dangerously inexperienced. Sasae says that in that case they will need a strategy, and one spirit reacts with amused interest to the idea. He repeats that a real plan is necessary as the spirit's laughter hangs in the air around him. The spirit remarks that he truly is intriguing if he has a scheme capable of turning the situation around. Sasae says the real threat in the fight against the dead males is their military force, and he proposes gathering more fighters, which makes the spirit demand to know exactly what he means. By the next morning, the scene shifts to the fortress as his plan starts moving into motion. As he heads out, the spirit mocks his wording as unsettling, and he bluntly says he is going to turn those 3 girls into this world's saviors. Walking down the stairs, he notes that if a major event happened before, there should naturally be some kind of record, and the spirit says it can hear him and admits that idea may actually work. He glances back with confidence and says the answer is already beginning right here, and that they only need to watch. Outside the fortress, a noisy crowd gathers around a mock battle as he watches the training match begin. The onlookers realize it is a practice duel between Outworlder women and the sword instructor Lady Jita, and excitement ripples through the crowd. As blades meet, the spectators insist there is no way Jita can lose because she is famous back home, though they admit the opponent showed skill against the dead males. The 2 fighters launch into a fierce exchange, and the crowd is stunned that they are evenly matched in speed. Their swords keep colliding in a blur, and the tension climbs as neither side gives an inch. The clash intensifies again, and a spectator breathes sharply that Lady Jada is even stronger than expected. In the middle of the exchange, one fighter seizes an opening and declares that she has her opponent trapped. The white-haired fighter breaks through with a sudden charge, driving her attack forward as the duel swings sharply in her favor. Lady Jita admits her opponent is impressive, then warns that if that is the case, she should not mind what comes next. With fierce determination, the white-haired fighter closes in and declares that this is what happens when she cannot hold back. She all of a sudden switches to a kick, and the spectators are stunned by the unexpected move as the strike crashes toward Lady Jita. Following through without hesitation, she says this is how she normally fights as her close-range assault overwhelms the duel. Lady Jita ends up on the ground and concedes defeat, while the white-haired winner stands over her with calm confidence and the crowd stares in shock. The onlookers erupt, saying she turned the tables in an instant and calling her amazing after defeating Lady Jita so quickly. Surrounded at once, Lady Minako is flooded with requests as everyone asks what those unfamiliar moves were and begs her to teach them. From a distance, someone notes with amusement that she has become extremely popular, while the crowd keeps swarming around her and praising the quality of her martial arts. Watching the scene, Sasae remarks that Minako's straightforward yet appealing fighting style has always had a way of pulling people in. Sasai notes that Manako is not only well liked, as people even gather high above to watch her. He explains that his stepmother Kanai has already taken charge of reinforcing the fortress defenses as one of its commanders, while Hinana is using her intelligence to create new weapons anyone can use. He reflects that those three always shine, and says that in his own world people would naturally gather around them just like they do here. A spirit says it understands that shining light, but adds that it only matters if they truly become figures people can follow, then asks what he plans to do. He answers that he will remain in their shadow and do what they cannot, compensating for the weakness they all share. The spirit questions what weakness he means, and he quietly prepares to explain himself. Before he can continue, the northern fortress grows noisy as people remark that the locals seem to be giving something their full attention. An older beastman says he heard everything and praises him for driving off the dead males, calling it a splendid achievement and saying the pantsers can finally hold their heads high. As Shiro looks on in confusion and asks who the speaker is, someone guesses that he is a different racer from the local people. Lu-san quickly warns Shiro that this man is another enemy trying to steal the spotlight. An older beastman apologizes for interrupting and says he knows she is busy. The foxwoman bitterly notes that despite that, he is still forcing her to give him formal treatment. Keeping her composure, she says that if that is truly his view, then they should quickly finish this detour. As she faces him across the table, he adds that they should also settle the matter of the extra relief supplies they requested recently. The atmosphere all of a sudden turns vicious as he dumps a drink over her head and the humiliation cuts deep. He coldly calls her a servant and demands to know when she ever got permission to speak her mind to him. He mocks her by suggesting that defeating the dead males has made her arrogant, and she right away denies it and says she would never act that way. The Beastman reminds her that he is the one she should be thanking for saving former criminals and warriors from conquered lands from the gallows and giving them a chance to work for a better world. Forced to endure the pressure, she lowers herself and acknowledges that he is the honorable benefactor they are supposed to thank. Satisfied, the older Beastman says that she clearly understands her place. After seeing the visitor off and hearing the goods would arrive by tomorrow, the man all of a sudden adds that he has decided to stay the night. The foxwoman is visibly shaken as he presses further, making it clear he plans to burden her again and souring the air at once. As he steers the exchange somewhere improper, he smugly remarks that she was awkward at first but seems to have gotten used to it lately. Watching from hiding, Shiro is stunned, and his companion explains that the man is one of the financiers backing their war with money and supplies. Shiro angrily demands to know why they must rely on private financiers when these enemies threaten the whole world, and she answers that it is complicated because the war against the dead males has not been made public. She adds that the people gathered there all carry troubled pasts, so their forces remain small even against such a powerful enemy, and Shiro realizes that is the real reason. The explanation only grows darker as he reflects that this world is no different from his own, with no real unity or global brotherhood behind the scenes. The older Beastman keeps cornering the foxwoman with degrading words, contrasting oppressors and oppressed, while hinting that he may force even worse humiliation on her before nightfall. Before it can get any worse, a fierce woman bursts in, sending dishes flying as a brutal kick crashes into the offender and stops him cold. Shiro watches in relief and decides that whatever happens next, he cannot let this cruelty continue. The fierce woman steps in with a frozen glare, making it instantly clear she will not tolerate what is happening. With her foot still pinning him down, the older beastman furiously demands what she thinks she is doing and reminds her of his status. She fires back without a pause, saying she has no idea who he is and openly brushing him off. The foxwoman urgently begs Lady Monako to stop, warning that the man she struck is an extremely important guest. Even pinned beneath her, the beastman threatens that she will regret it if she lays a hand on him. Monako refuses to yield and repeats that she does not care who he is, while the tension in the room spikes even higher. The foxwoman drops to her knees and desperately begs Monako to step away from him. The humiliated beastman calls her appearance and manners disgraceful, while Monako clicks her tongue and towers over the room without giving an inch. Monako coolly concludes that he must be the rumored outsider, and when challenged, she remains utterly unconcerned. Then the foxwoman, shaken but firm, says she has changed her mind and declares that she will withdraw the entire relief goods request, despite the protest behind her. The older beastman says that if she wants the goods, she must send the outsider woman to his room that night. The horned woman urgently tells him not to do something so reckless, insisting the girl is a key fighter against the dead males, but he angrily shuts her down. The white-haired woman ends the exchange and says that if they want her to honor the request, they need to show good faith first. The spell changes her condition in an unexpected way. Once outside, the horned woman apologizes for dragging her into something so humiliating and uncomfortable, but the white-haired woman says no apology is needed. The horned woman still fears that if she does nothing, everyone will suffer, yet she quickly insists it is fine. The white-haired woman looks troubled but says she will somehow handle it. Watching her expression, Shiro realizes that look is very bad news. Shiro grimly concludes that she seems ready to force herself through something terrible out of sheer habit. Under the night sky, the castle looms in silence as the weight of what may happen hangs over everything. Alone in the hallway, the white-haired woman exhales and admits that she already knew this would happen, her face heavy with resignation. Shiro catches up and urgently asks where Monako is going, reminding her that the waiting man is expecting her, then calls out to Sasae. Sasae says she knows what he is thinking and argues that if he lets her handle it, everyone might be saved, adding that she genuinely cares about these people and cannot ignore their suffering. Facing him directly, Sasae says he never changes, no matter what world he ends up in. Shiro recalls how her reckless honesty once sent her charging alone into a crowd of enemies, and he compares it to the time she stepped in to save him after he failed to protect a friend. The memory turns savage as Sasae lashes out at the men in fury, and Shiro admits that although she seemed to win back then, she still paid for it. Back in the present, Shiro warns that this is not a fight she can win, then coldly asks whether even she truly understands what that man intends to do. Sasae snaps back that of course she knows, but the force in her answer feels thin. Shiro right away sees through the bluff and tells her that she really does not understand. As she walks away, Shiro says that because she does not know, she keeps throwing herself into danger out of pure kindness. Shiro pleads with her to at least understand that some people only notice the pain they inflict once they are hurt themselves, while her silence says everything. Sasae reaches the door, knocks, and waits alone in the corridor as the heavy entrance looms before her. The man on the other side greets her with obvious anticipation and notes that she has come. Sasae steps inside and faces him with a guarded, steady expression. The man crudely boasts about his past and implies he had always wanted someone like her, making the atmosphere instantly vile. Keeping her composure, Sasae says her brother is worried about her and that if they meet here, he will probably interrupt them. She calmly suggests moving somewhere else, and the man laughs as he catches his breath beneath the night sky. On the rooftop, he says no one will bother them at the south end of the fortress, but her resistance only makes the moment feel even more disturbing. Sasae forces herself to agree and admits she has no experience, saying she will simply follow his instructions. Hearing that, the man grows even more interested and starts giving improper directions, driving the situation deeper into discomfort. Sasae all of a sudden turns and firmly tells him to keep his hands off her, making her rejection unmistakable. As she steps away, she says this has gone far enough and moves to shut it down. The hooded man coolly remarks that the doll he made was high quality, while the shaken man stares in confusion and realizes it was only a mud doll. The hooded figure says there are now only two choices, starting with sending the relief force right away and without delay. He warns that refusal means dying miserably on the spot, after which the hooded figure will simply take the relief by force. The terrified man blurts out that no one should have been able to use such outrageous magic without being discovered. The hooded figure reveals overwhelming backing behind him, as monstrous and spirit-like beings gather and crush any thought of resistance. He admits he may have been bluffing, but says he still enjoyed pushing the man around a little and is satisfied with that much. The situation becomes uncomfortable. At sunrise, the pig-like official says his predecessor resigned for personal reasons, so he has taken over the post, while the others stare at how much aid is being given. The hooded figure says he understands their weakness now, while nearby people eagerly hope they can keep working together, and another voice warmly agrees. As the women support one another, one worries that she may have eaten too much and fallen asleep in his room, while another says the others are being too kind and asks if she is all right. The explanation turns grim as he says that anyone who walks the proper path gains the power to draw people in, but also becomes helpless against those who stray from that path. He agrees completely and says that is exactly why those upright people must be pushed into becoming the saviors this rotten world needs, while he himself is far better suited to the unscrupulous path. The women resolve to walk the righteous path and become the saviors admired by the whole world. In contrast, he declares that he will take the wicked path and support them from behind the scenes. The vision expands into a united force, as he says they will ultimately gather an army strong enough to destroy the dead males, one that rises above race and status. He says he now understands the plan they are aiming for, but points out that if they are thinking in numbers, they will need more of them. A monstrous voice counters that the dead males are not going to sit around and wait. As stone-like monsters loom closer, the challenge becomes immediate, demanding to know whether they should really be allowed to continue unchecked. As the forest monsters close in on the shield-bearing group, one of the girls spots the threat while a boy nearby breaks into a terrified scream. The boy is overwhelmed as multiple creatures slam into him at once, dragging him down while he cries out in panic. Even as he is seized and lifted, he desperately begs them to stop. A creature clamps onto him, and he can only groan in fear and pain as the attack keeps going. The others are thrown into chaos, and his desperate scream stretches out as the monsters swarm around them. The effect of the spell pushes her past her limit. Then, a violent barrage rips through the forest, blasting monsters apart and forcing the assault to break. From above, a massive bombardment tears through the horde outside the city, shaking the battlefield and halting the advance. In the aftermath, 2 figures are left sprawled near the great tree, thrown clear by the attack. Watching the rescue succeed, the beast-like companion excitedly reports that they got them, and the calm young man answers that they did well. Walking through the corridor, he explains that the golems sent out to scout had made contact with dead male forces, and although they held them back briefly, the enemy was already close to the fortress. The atmosphere turns unbearably heavy between them. The woman concludes that he likely cast it without even realizing it, and explains that the golem magic was actually a new spell he had invented himself. The companions clarify that ordinary golem magic belongs to earth magic, and usually makes little more than simple clay dolls or crude walls, not units capable of reconnaissance or diversion. She points out that he gave those golems moisture and texture by using his water magic on them. She adds that he also used fire magic to grant them warmth, personality, and a kind of artificial mind, and says that by combining their powers he had elevated it into an entirely new spell. He reflects that in this world, mixed elemental magic is treated as improper from the very start. The small armored companion says his talent for turning strange ideas into practical techniques may be exactly what was meant by the warning about walking a wicked path. As he thinks back on his father's words, he recalls the lesson that ordinary people who survive need every possible tool at their disposal. He understands that this mindset came from his father, and the others press him to decide what he plans to do now that he knows how little time remains. As 2 tiny familiars hover before him, he calmly says everything is fine and reveals that his next gambit is already in motion. With a confident grin, he explains that ordinary men forced to use whatever they can tend to develop a sharp eye for people. The next day, alarm all of a sudden erupts outside the stone building. A maid rushes in and urgently informs Lady Sugar that an emergency magic message has arrived from the capital. Reading the message, the woman visibly pales and orders them to summon the Outworlders at once. She gathers the group inside and faces them with unmistakable urgency. She tells Sugar that the matter concerns him because an emergency communication has come from the capital. Holding up the message, she states bluntly that the authorities now want the Outworlders. Sugar asks what they could possibly be charged with, while another woman anxiously asks whether the authorities now see them as criminals, and the messenger confirms that, sadly, they do. Shaken by the notice, the woman explains that the charges are assault against an official and extortion. As the others trace the accusation back to that official from the other day, they realize this is where the whole crisis began. The woman fires back that the real wrongdoing came from the man who mistreated her, and asks why they are the ones being treated like criminals. Another woman bitterly says this is exactly the kind of man they are dealing with, certain he twisted the whole story before taking it to higher authority. Lady Sugar apologizes, admitting the official's abuse of power set all of this in motion and that she misjudged him, but the group presses her on what she expects them to do now that the capital has ordered them brought in. Looking grim, she warns that losing them now would be devastating, but if they provoke